Hey, good people, Davia here, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Shaker. You know what? I get the best people, y'all. I've got another amazing brother with me today, Derrik Pannell. He describes himself as a serial entrepreneur, and he has owned, I know, a number of businesses. Got some really cool things coming up that I'm excited to share with you guys. So, I just want to tell you a little bit about him. He's got a beautiful wife. He's been married for how many years?
24.
Yeah, 24 years, two adult sons who are also entrepreneurs following in dad's footsteps. Um, he is the founder and developer of COED, which stands for the Center for Entrepreneurial Development. What struck me when I had the opportunity to ask Mr. Purnell, Derrik, to be on my podcast was his heart, the heart behind his entrepreneurial pursuits. So welcome. I'm so excited for you to get to know him, and I know I'm going to learn some things as well. So thank you for taking time out of your, I know, very busy schedule,
No,
running a
no.
bunch of businesses and developing real estate and whatnot, to come and sit on my couch with me. So
Well,
it's
thank
very
you. It's a
meaningful.
pleasure. It's a
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah. So how did you like? Did you always know that you were an entrepreneur? Did you start in corporate space? To give me a little bit of your history.
No, so I knew at a young age, I think I started um, cutting grass when I was 14 years old. Um, I was just doing the neighborhood, cutting grass. That was at 14 by, it was called Derrik's Grass Cutting Service.
Okay.
And we had a minivan. I used to ask my folks, can you just drop me off in this neighborhood so I can cut the grass and I'll call you from someone's house and pick me up. By 19 years old, it was called Pannell's Landscaping and Lawn Maintenance Company.
Okay.
I had about 18 staff and was netting six figures. So I kind of knew then, like,
Yeah, kind of.
like this entrepreneur thing, I think I'm made for
So
this.
you did this through high school.
I did. I
Wow.
did. Played sports, excelled in school, had an academic scholarship to college. So even through college, I was still running a business. Through law school, I was coming in law school with jeans and dirty boots because, entrepreneur. So
Yeah,
even some of my classmates would always say, um, do you want to be an attorney? And I would say, no, I just want to know the law. I'm here because I want to know the law, but I'm an entrepreneur. So oftentimes, even as an adult, people would say, oh, Pannell's an attorney. I said, no, I'm not an attorney, even though I did entertainment law.
Okay.
And so I, was an agent with the NFL, NBA, and music industry. But, I had my own firm because I was an entrepreneur. So so even to this day, I always say, no, I was an entrepreneur who knew the law. Probably because the lawyers get such bad reps, so I didn't want that stigma placed on me. But I knew at a young age, and so then what I realized when I look back in hindsight, like I would cut a lawn, and then I would buy a bigger lawnmower. Then I'll get my buddy to cut with me, and then we'll get a bigger lawnmower. Then I'll say, okay, you two cut this side of town, and then I'm going to get somebody. We're going to cut this side of town. So what I was doing without really knowing the name as I was reinvesting back into the business. And that's something that I try to teach entrepreneurs today is the importance. Even if you get large contracts, don't go out and get you some fancy car, fancy clothes and look the part and then the business falters or slows down. So just reinvest back in the business and over time, it'll grow, it'll pay off. So, um, so I knew early. I knew early this is what God designed me to be. And my mother was an entrepreneur. My father was a teacher.
Okay.
And so I teach entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
So I got the
yeah.
best of both worlds,
Yeah,
right? And combined
yeah.
them and knew exactly, what my calling was. And so for me, teaching is natural. Entrepreneurship was natural. So, I always say when people say, what do you do? I say, man, I teach people how to fish.
I love
And,
it. Yeah.
So, and not only, a lot of times we know the adage because then it's like if you give a man a fish, you eat for a day. If you teach him how to fish, they eat for a lifetime. But also what I realize is when you teach someone how to fish, now they have that knowledge and they can teach someone, and then it becomes perpetual. And then hopefully, one will become two, and then two will become 100, and so on and so forth. So, I just enjoy teaching.
Well, I imagine that that's part of the the ethos that you drill in, that's part of your teaching.
Mm-hmm.
What you're learning from me, you are too, right?
Pay it forward.
Pay it
Absolutely.
forward. You are to
Absolutely.
pay it
Don't
forward. That's
take it to
part
the
of-
grave with
Yeah,
you. Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I do. I do.
Okay.
And it means a lot when I see the people that I teach teaching, because that means they get it. They get it. So to be in an environment that I like to think, particularly at the Center of Entrepreneurial Development, a lot of those entrepreneurs, I like to think I had a hand in their success, but to see them now as resources for other entrepreneurs is exactly what the vision was.
That's amazing. So is the landscape business still in existence?
No,
Okay.
I sold it when
Okay.
I moved because I went to law school in LA.
Okay.
Going into entertainment, you want to
gotta
be
go
in
where the fish is, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I went out and
Okay.
and so I sold it and then went out there and stayed out there, came back and just got into other businesses. But I was hard on the person who did our lawn because I was like, no, this I know how this is supposed to be done. Right. But I ease back. My wife helped me like relax, let them do what they do. I'm like, okay. So
I remember when my boys would cut our lawn. And it just seemed on principle. You just have to cut the lawn. And it looked like they were trying to create mazes. It was so bad.
Oh, that was us for a long time.
Trying to leave it for them to fix and not go in and fix it ourselves was really, well, my husband fixed it. My dad never let me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I was not allowed and I wanted to. Do lawn. I think it was the only time he could kind of be away from all the girls.
Right.
Because I got it.
Just let me do this. Let me do this. Yes.
Yeah. So after the landscaping business, landscaping business, there's law school. There's a period of time in entertainment, sports law. You did all that out there.
Yeah. Well, I came back.
So this is home. After. Columbus is home.
Columbus is home. Born and raised. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I came back here and created an agency, and even the focus was entrepreneurship, because what we call it was post-career development for athletes. So because I always told them like, most of their years in the league are only like, the average for NFL players is like 3 years. A lot of us know the big names that's in there for, a lifetime, so to speak, 10, 15 years. But for most athletes, they get in there, make a few million, 3 years later, they're done. So I kind of focus on how can I incorporate entrepreneurship into what they're doing now, so that when they leave the league, they've got a business that's already operational. Because oftentimes you'll see even what I call semi-successful athletes, when they leave the league, have no other skill set other than that sport.
Yeah, that's all they've been doing. They're from childhood.
From childhood,
right?
Yeah.
There's usually no space. I have two relatives that are elite athletes in the track and field space, and actually my niece is a 2-time Olympian, and their whole world, they didn't have summer jobs. They didn't, in develop
whatever that sport was,
whatever that sport was, and that's where your community came from. So very, very important.
Which is interesting because even I did a program called Point 98, and it talked about how 2% of collegiate athletes go pro, but the other 98% do not. And so even those athletes did nothing but that sport probably since childhood. So when you do something your entire youth all the way up into college, and then it stops, then what do you do? There's no other skills you acquired along the way. So that the Point 98 was a program to kind of say, hey, listen, let's think about some things just in case, like a plan B. Just in case you don't get to go pro, then what are you going to do? So for me, it was important because, my sons were athletes, and but I remember having a conversation with my wife, who's an educator as well as myself. Matter of fact, when we met, we were both teaching.
Okay.
And so I went to her and I said, when they were graduating, I said, is it okay if they explore entrepreneurship as an option? I said, then if that doesn't work, then they can go to college, kind of like athletes do. They go off and try to pursue their athletic, career. And then if it doesn't work, they go to college. So I thought she was gonna give me pushback, a lot more pushback. But she actually was like, no, I think that's a great idea, And so it probably helped because I have a decent track record as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, sure.
And but she said, yeah, let's do that. So I told them just pick something that you really enjoy doing. You know what I mean? Because if you enjoy doing it, you'll do it when the money's not there. And if you do something for a long period of time, you'll become good at it, probably to the point you can make money. So they took me up on that, and both of them are, successful in their own rights. Actually doing very well. So I'm a proud papa. You know what I mean? And but they are Gen Zers, so they think differently. And it's okay. But I love them, and I'm proud of them.
I love that you as you laid the groundwork for them, the framework for them. If you do something you love for a long period of time, right? You talk about these Gen Zers, right? The expectation is things happen quickly. Overnight success. I'm going to be a YouTuber. I'm going to be an influencer or whatever I'm going to be, and it's going to happen quickly. And I think that was really important that you laid that. If you do it, something you love for a long period of time, then you can make money at it. And I love that expectation. They're still relatively young and they're already successful.
Yes.
So long is a relative term.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It is, but I think that was a good bit of wisdom you dropped.
I think so.
Your young
I think so.
there.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So did they decide to go to college? Have they continued in their what's
so the my oldest son, who's 22, he started first. He wanted a direct garment printer, which is expensive to say the least, right? And I told him no. I said, I'm gonna get you a screen print, and you're gonna do that elbow, and you're gonna work hard, and you're gonna get that conveyor oven, and sitting there and sweat. And if you do this for a year, it lets me know that you're serious. I said, and if you can do this for a year, then I'll invest in your business. And so he did that. So a year to the date, his start date, I purchased the printer for him. I said, this is all I'm going to do. You're still going to pay rent, because he was one of my tenants, and he paid rent in full. I didn't ease up on him. I would say probably a year after that, he comes to me and says, Dad, I've got 100,000 followers. And I said, well, how does that affect your bottom line? You know what I mean? I'm old school. He's Gen Z, right? Mm-hmm. He showed me his bank statements. I said, well, can you show Dad how to get some followers? I know, that's right. Because that has a positive difference.
So are your sons teaching too? Because I might need to sign up.
And listen, so he hit his six figures at 20.
Come on,
man. Where I did, but I remind him I did mine at 19. So okay. you were close, but and but now he's even doing way better than that. He's almost net monthly. Wow. At 22. Wow. And so but he's we almost feel like he's a professional athlete, because my wife and I go to his apartment and he's got a bunch of expensive toys. Like one of the things that comes to mind, they have these cereal dispensers, and you put them in there, and then you lift it like they have the hotels. You hit the little tab, and the cereal comes out. Mm-hmm. So they're airtight. So I told my wife, I said, now for 20-something years when he was at home, he wouldn't even roll up the bag in the cereal box. So after one bowl, the cereal was stale. Yeah. And he has the audacity to get an airtight cereal dispenser when he moves out. So we laugh at that. Yeah. So she said we're going to sneak over there and pop the lid off of his dispenser when we come, just so we can make his cereal stale, right? I love it. But he's doing well. Wow. And then my younger son is a musician. And so I told him, I said, now this one is a little different. Music is a little more difficult to monetize at the beginning. I said, but just focus on your craft and just you get better at it. And so while he was doing that, he like myself loves to cook. And so, we own a restaurant, and he took over the kitchen in the restaurant and loved it. So when the folks come in, they talk about how good the lamb chops are and the pasta Alfredo, and and I say, my 20-year-old is cooking that, and it blows their mind. So I try to tell him, I said, I'm doing more than just helping you with this kitchen. I'm helping you with your husbandry skills, right? So I said, your wife will thank me later for teaching you how to cook, And but even along with cooking very well, his music has really panned out. He's had people come from other countries that wanted him to produce their albums. And so, he's starting to see the monetization in that as well. So, I'm just happy to see them in a place where they enjoy going to work, if you will, and particularly for themselves. So, and
There's a lot of streams of learning here, not just your entrepreneurial prowess and what you're. And I want to talk more about co-ed at some point, but there's a lot of parenting um, skill, I think, or principles that I think are important. You made them pay rent. You made them work hard. You kept your word. I remember my younger son saying to me one time, we would do these check-ins. I'm a counselor, so I'm all about the relationship kind of stuff. And, so how's it going? How's our relationship going? And he says, it's my younger one. You're doing well. He said, the hard thing though is to punish myself. I'm like, huh? Well, we'll do something and you'll take away a privilege and then you'll forget. And then I know that I'm on punishment, so I have to punish myself because you don't remember. Like, that's true. Or we know how to get around you. All we got to do is invite a friend over and you'll make an exception. Whoa, I didn't realize I was that readable.
Right.
That I was not keeping my word. That's what that meant to me is I have created a space where you don't have to trust my word. And so things changed for him. I think he regrets sharing that little story. Things had to change, but I love that he could tell me that. It spoke to his integrity. Oh, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. I got to punish myself, kind of thing. So I really admire when I hear parents are consistent. They keep their word. They require you to live up to your responsibility. I think that's another stream.
Yeah,
of,
absolutely.
One of the reasons why your sons have work ethic, right? Why they're so successful. And then they've seen the pattern. So
Yeah.
That's really, and your wife, you said your wife's an educator as
She
well.
is.
Yeah.
She's on year 29. She just started year 29 of
Okay.
teaching. And so
Wow.
I think she says she's going to be ready to go after 30.
Okay.
And so, we'll be excited to see that next chapter and with it. And because, even the school system, they moved the goalposts, as they say. First it was 30 years retired, then it was 35, then it was 62.
Okay.
And so I said, do you understand if you wait till you're 62, you will have taught for 40 years? Because she came right out of college teaching. And I was like, even though she loves teaching and she's a great teacher, but I'm like, no, I think, we're in a position where if you want to stop at 30, you can stop at 30. Yeah. And she said, I think I want to stop at 30. Okay. Yeah. So I said, okay, then so be it. Yeah. But back on what you were saying as far as, integrity, I always teach my sons like, always do what you say you're going to do. And it, since they were very young, I tell them that's very important. And sometimes I would regret, not necessarily regret, but it would be something like if they say, what we're doing today, Dad, when they were little. And I say, well, we're going to go to the grocery store, then we're going to stop by your grandmother's house, and then we're going to go Chuck E. Cheese or something, right? So we would go to a grocery store, and then I would say, okay, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese. And they said, no, you said grocery store, then grandma's, then Chuck E. Cheese. And I said, well, I was just saying what all we were going to do today, not necessarily in that order, but they would hold me to my word, even in the order in which I said something. Okay. So they were brought up knowing how important, integrity is, because that's what I believe is such a priority. And a lot of folks miss that, but I told them the same things that are required to be a good entrepreneur are required to be a good person, so, you have to have character, integrity, and just do right by people. I said, don't ever chase money. I've never done that. It's just, I've always said, if I just do right by people, God to bless. And he has, and they, live by that same thing. So, we're truly blessed,
You are. And as you said, paying it forward, blessing people, blessed to be a blessing. Is right. How the phrase goes. So share with me some of the businesses. I know that you have the restaurant, also a jazz club. I've been there, didn't know you. I think I've had those lamb chops, are very, very good.
Thank you.
I know that you've got some really amazing real estate development going on. I'd love to hear your vision, what you're doing, and your vision around those.
So, as a serial entrepreneur, as I've been called, so I'll start a business, and even in its height, I may say, okay, I want to do something different. And just because the thrill of starting a business, for me, businesses are like children, so, some people just love to have a lot of them. Now, 2 children were fine. Let me clarify that. But from a business standpoint, I love just developing them, having them, from the beginning in the infancy stage, helping them grow, and then watching them get to the point where they can take care of themselves like children. And then, I would start, and say, hey, let's have another one, so to speak. And then I would say the Blue Note Jazz Cafe is something that was dear to me because my father was a jazz musician. And so in 2019, I moved my parents in to our home per my wife's request. Because we saw them getting older, so she was like, we need to, bring them on in. So it took about a year to convince them that it was a better move for them, but they came, and then my younger sister, who lived next door to my parents, who had cancer, we brought her on in as well, because they were like her caretakers. So that was all three of them moved in 2019. COVID hits, lost my sister. She was 43 years old. So it's one thing to lose family members, but to lose someone under your roof, because now the whole dynamic changes because you're used to seeing this person at 6 o'clock in the morning, having coffee with them. 6 months after that, my father passes, and I mean, none of this was like on the horizon, because when they came, everyone was quote unquote healthy, and so we didn't see it. We were blindsided by both of them. So, now I just spoiled my mother, and she's so glad that we spent the time, because I spoiled them while they were there. I put a shed out back, and the shed was too big to come down the driveway, so we had to have a crane lift the shed over the house and set it in the backyard. I told him, I said, Mom, you're expensive, right? But she wanted her she shed.
She's got her she shed, okay.
And she calls it her God pod, right? So this is where she just goes spend time with God. Her God pod.
Okay.
And so she loves being out there and just enjoying her time alone. And so since I had bought her that, I felt like, I got to give my pop something. And so with him being a jazz musician, I said, I'm going to open up a jazz club. And there wasn't one in Columbus at all at the time. So I did that. So even when I was doing the construction on it, he'd be in there playing the piano and so we were able to open January of 2020. He was able to play, while we had patrons in there. And I would tell him like, Dad, the people that I'm paying, the band that I'm paying, they're here. Yeah, so you have to move. And one more song. So and the people in the audience were like, no, let him play, So he got to see it in his heyday. And but that is my homage to him from a jazz standpoint. Plus, I play trumpet. So he instilled that in me as well. I'm right brain and left brain. I'm a creative, but I was a math and Spanish teacher. So I try to do anything I feel like God says try that. I'm gonna just try it and see what happens. But so the Blue Note is doing very well now, and I just one day said, what, I think I want to get into this real estate development game. I guess you call it a game, but got into it. And start purchasing, commercial properties, and then I had the mentality not necessarily build it and they'll come, but build it right and they'll come. And so I took a 40,000 square foot warehouse, 4 stories, and created COED, which stands for the Center of Entrepreneurial Development. So it's office space, but it's also like a co-working space for minority entrepreneurs. Everyone's welcome there. But this is just something I feel like when minority entrepreneurs who have different struggles can go in there and feel like I belong here.
Yes.
I can see people who look like me, who maybe even have the same struggle, but they can relate to what I'm going through. So for me, it was just important to just have a safe space that we can also change the narrative of how we do business with one another, because we were always kind of taught or a learned behavior of competition. If you're in the same space as me, then we can't do the same things, or we can't support one another. But a lot of the floors consist of people who do the same businesses, and what they do is they support one another in their journey. And I think most other cultures, they support one another a lot better than we have historically. So for me, it was important to just create a platform that can just change the trajectory of how we operate as minority entrepreneurs. I know when you talk about narrowing the wealth gap, it worked for me. So I felt like this is something I want to share to, others who look like me, so they can have that same opportunity, and it's working. It's
That's
working.
amazing.
So
So some of the your left brain, right brain situation. I understand that some of the spaces in this large warehouse are creative spaces.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Like particularly like the third floor, we call it the creative suites, and it's comprised of artists, people in fashion, fine arts, photography, things of that nature. That whole floor is just creatives, and then on one of the wings is all music and photography, and so we do videography, podcasts, movies. So definitely have a space for the creatives, and then we also have like some are just firms like marketing firms, consulting firms, more white collar. But I think that there's a space even for them to overlap, because creatives need to also understand business, and business folks can definitely benefit from that creative space as far as taking their business to the next level. So
And taking it to the people. You got to
taking
be able to package it.
you got to be able to
Right? And
package
you
it.
need a creative
Absolutely.
mind.
Right, right.
Right?
Yep.
I love that. I
So
love that. So I read in the paper about another commercial development that you and your wife just what am I trying to say? Not encountered. That you purchased.
yeah.
I was trying to come up with a
Good synonym.
it failed me. So
Yeah. It's funny you say that because my wife reads these papers, she reads these articles, and she says, I didn't have anything to do with that. And I said, babe, you had everything to do with that. And so, because sometimes she just thinks that, she teaches, and then she gets the news of what's going on. But even on the way over here today, I called her and I said, I just want to call you. I said, I know you're busy, because the kids haven't got back into the classroom until tomorrow. I said, but I want to thank you for supporting me. Because, and I usually, when I talk about my family is when I get choked up, because that's like the most important thing. It's like God, family, and everything else. And, but my wife is, the reason why, I have the success that I have. And sometimes, I even share with other entrepreneurs, because I do classes, not just for entrepreneurs, but sometimes for the significant others of entrepreneurs, because that's a whole nother world. And I think that sometimes when clients come to me and they say, I'm thinking about starting a business, the very first question I say is, what does your significant other think of this? And if they say, well, they ain't really feeling it, I'm like, well, you better think twice about it, because if you don't have that support, at least one of the two is not going to make it, either relationship, the business, or neither. And so but I was blessed to have a wife who saw in me. We always hear people talk about potential, but she was like, nah,
well, if you met after 19, you'd already demonstrated a little bit of
potential.
Yeah, a little bit of potential.
Like that, little kinetic.
Yeah.
Right? And but yeah, and she said, nah, like, and also it was because when she met me, I was an entrepreneur. So it wasn't like I was saying, okay, I'm gonna leave this 9 to 5 I got, and I'm gonna try to jump into something that's gonna take all my time. And she was like, and plus she was the type, she loves taking naps. So she was like, okay, I'm gonna nap while you go take over the world.
Okay.
Right. And then I'll see you this evening.
Yeah, I'll be fortified and ready to.
Yes. And so she, it was a great combination. But when we decided to have children, that's when I stopped being an agent, because I didn't want to fly around the world. I wanted to be here with my sons. And so, and that I did, from 3 months old, because both of them born in October. And then in January, after Christmas break, she went back to the classroom, and they just stayed with me.
Okay.
So all the way up until, they went to school. And so them 4 years, it was me and their little bouncies and me burping them in these meetings and them spitting up on my arm. But it's the reason why we're so close to this day, so they've seen entrepreneurship since birth.
They also got a dad that was nurturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
There are just so many spaces in here. I didn't expect this to be a parenting class. I really
Right.
But that's what I love about conversations and getting to know someone, learning about their journey. Is there just so many lanes and so many. It doesn't matter what you're about or where you've been. You can learn something from somebody's story is one of the things I love about doing this. It's like you just don't know who's next door
Right.
and what they carry.
Right.
And my goodness, I'd love to talk another half an hour. I just want to make sure. Let me quick hit on the latest purchase in Franklinton, and what is it that you plan to do with it, or do you know yet?
So it is still trying to figure it out.
Okay.
I've been thinking about putting another Blue Note, the Jazz Cafe, in that area. It's a very popular area. It's a new area.
It's a burgeoning.
Yeah. And but I've got some other folks who are pulling up my coattail saying I would love to be in that space with you, or so I'm trying to figure that one out. That's what I love about development. It's like each purchase is like a blank canvas. And you get to decide what you're gonna put there, but you got to be wise and survey the land,
Build it well.
see what's there, build it well, and they'll come. Right. So I'm just trying to figure that out right now. But in the meantime, I've got probably 3 other commercial buildings that's in front of it. So I haven't quite got to the point where I develop at the same time, because I've got some great contractors and things like that. But from a vision standpoint, I'm working on that piece. So.
Really inspirational conversation.
Thank you.
Really, thank you for your time.
No, thank you for having me.
I want to tell you what we're drinking before we toast.
Okay.
We just had some fancy lemonade. I actually used a store-bought lemonade and muddled some blackberries and add a little bit of mint, garnished it with lemon. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty tasty and refreshing. So cheers to you.
Cheers.
And all that's coming. And congratulations to all that has happened already. I can't wait to hear more about your sons as they continue to burst on the scene. Wow, it's good stuff.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Appreciate you.
All right, good people. Well, that concludes this episode of Tales from the Shaker. I bet you got something that I didn't even know that you were going to get from this conversation. So blessings. Talk to you next time.